Imagine a country that once was considered one of the wealthiest in South America, literally floating on oil. Yes, Venezuela was the place where oil wealth used to pour in. But now? Well, many people wonder how this powerhouse ended up in such turmoil. A financial disaster, some say, but isn't that an understatement? Now, take a moment to think about how people's lives are being overturned. Consider Isabella, a mother of 3, struggling for basic needs. How did we get here? Is it just poor leadership? Or maybe something deeper? Venezuela's meteoric rise and then fall is a tale everyone should know. There's much more behind the scenes than what meets the eye. So, how did this country, with all its wealth and promise, get here? As we unravel this, you'll see it's not as simple as it seems. We need to dig a bit deeper. Stay with me, and by the end, you might see Venezuela in a completely new light. All right, let's dive into the complexities of Venezuela's economy. It's a bit of a mess, to be perfectly honest. You see, with inflation rates so astronomical they're practically reaching for the stars, can we really take such a situation seriously? The official line, if you care to listen, suggests that recovery is just around the corner. But seriously, can you trust that narrative when shelves line up bare and everyday folks struggle just for basic necessities? Take Maria, for instance. She's a single mother, juggling work and family, and the skyrocketing prices are making her life a daily struggle. Now, when you consider that oil production, historically a major earner for the country, is practically in free fall, you can't help but wonder what's next. The government blames sanctions and external pressures, which is partly true. But it's not the whole story, is it? Internal mismanagement, corruption, and flawed economic policies play significant roles too. With currency controls, which sound good on paper, the result is a thriving black market where real exchange rates are chaotic. You just have to question, where is the accountability? And as external investments dwindle, Venezuela's isolation grows. So, ask yourself, is there really a plan or just wishful thinking? Only time will tell, but for now, it's a mix of survival and guessing. Let's dive deeper into the economic landscape of Venezuela right now. Imagine a country once rich in oil, now grappling with financial chaos. You might expect an oil-rich nation would be swimming in cash, but it's drowning in hyperinflation instead. Now, you have to wonder, how did it get here? Well, let's look at the missteps, the corruption, and political turmoil that crushed the economy. First off, there are price controls, trying to make essential goods affordable for everyone, which sounds great, doesn't it? The problem is they've led to shortages. People like Carlos standing in line for hours just to get bread. And don't get me started on the black market. It thrives because people need basic goods, but it's illegal. Then there's oil, naturally. Once the backbone of this nation, the production is plummeting thanks to mismanagement and crumbling infrastructure. But despite all this, there's a resilience. Families are banding together, sharing what little they have, some even recycling to survive. Can you imagine that? The struggle to stay afloat is real, my friend. Yet amidst it all, people are fighting for a better tomorrow. Let's dive deep into the economic situation in Venezuela, which seems to defy logic. On the surface, it might look like just another struggling economy, but dig a little deeper, and you'll see it's much more complex. Unbelievably, in a country that sits on the world's largest oil reserves, people struggle to afford basic necessities. Why is that? Because there's more to this narrative than meets the eye. For one, we have hyperinflation, which renders the currency worthless. Imagine buying bread for 1,000,000 bolivars. Sounds surreal, doesn't it? And yet, that is the grim reality for many Venezuelans. Meet Jose, a school teacher who earns what used to be decent pay. Now, his salary can't even cover the grocery bill. But prices don't stop rising. Even more mind-boggling is the government's response. Instead of reforms, there's been more printing of money, worsening hyperinflation. So how did Venezuela get here? Next, we'll explore the political ties. Let's take a deeper look at the current economic situation in Venezuela. On the surface, some people might suggest things are improving, but are they really? We've heard about the rising oil prices, bringing potential relief to the GDP. However, does this benefit reach the average Venezuelan? Inflation continues to surge at astronomical rates, devouring the buying power of hardworking citizens. Remember Carlos, an ordinary factory worker who now struggles to feed his family on wages that used to be enough. People talk about government subsidies, but you have to ask, are they sufficient? Petrol might be the cheapest in the world, yet the scarcity means long queues, often for hours, just to fill up. Yet, let's consider the agricultural sector, historically a backbone for the economy, currently facing crippling challenges. While some industries show signs of recovery, the wider impacts on society remain destructive. What does the future hold? So let's dig into the deep complexities behind Venezuela's economic situation. Because it's never as simple as it seems, is it? We're talking about a country that once boasted one of the richest economies in Latin America, riding on a booming oil industry, and that's now spiraled into hyperinflation. On paper, Venezuela should be thriving, but reality paints a sharply different picture. Doesn't it make you wonder, how did things go so wrong? Let's consider the oil. Once the backbone of Venezuelan prosperity, it gradually became a curse. We're talking about over-reliance, an economy over-dependent on oil exports. When oil prices plummeted, so did their revenues. Let's not forget government mismanagement. Decades of policies that favored short-term gains without building a sustainable future. Think about it. If you have a finite resource, why wouldn't you plan for its end? Yet, here we are. The human aspect is perhaps the most heart-wrenching. Meet Ricardo, a former engineer who now drives a taxi to make ends meet. See, his story isn't rare. It's emblematic of the broader struggle. The struggle to survive in a system that feels rigged against its own people. All right, let's dive into the current economic situation in Venezuela. Things aren't as simple as they might seem. You see, it's easy to say the country is in crisis, but is that the whole story? Venezuela's economy has been technically shrinking, which sounds bad, but why exactly? Well, you have to consider that their main export, oil, has seen prices drop like a stone in water and global demand fluctuate wildly. It's a real roller coaster. Add to that the ongoing political tensions that seem to choke any real recovery, you begin to see how complicated these problems are. So what's really happening on the ground in Venezuela? Well, many citizens like our friend Carmen are finding ways to adapt and survive. They barter and trade and rely on remittances from relatives abroad, keeping their heads above water as best they can. But does that mean the government is playing no role at all? Well, they're trying, but the inflation is so intense that any measure taken feels like pouring water into a sieve. So let's dive deep into the mysterious labyrinth that is Venezuela's economy. How did a country once swimming in oil riches end up drowning in economic despair? The answer is layered, like a cake that's gone sour. You might hear that the government is still promising prosperity. But let's be real, most Venezuelans are struggling just to eat. Can you imagine living in a place where inflation runs wild, taming your every purchase? Lucia, a school teacher, earns barely enough to make it through a week. And think about it, this is someone with a degree and a vocation. What about those who don't have such backgrounds? They find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty. Now, we can't ignore the role of external factors like sanctions and global oil prices. But honestly, there's a whole blame game between leadership and reality. You would expect a change in strategy, yet the approach stays the same, riding the same old wave. And what about innovation? Instead of thriving tech scenes, we see talented people leaving for greener pastures. The brain drain, it's a massive leak draining potential away. So to sum up, Venezuela's situation is more than an economic issue. It's a human issue crying for a breakthrough. Hey, have you ever wondered what's really happening in Venezuela? Because it seems like everyone's got an opinion, but nobody really digs deep enough to see what's beneath the surface. So, let's delve into the core of this crisis, because, trust me, there's more than just one layer here. You see, Venezuela once sat on a huge pile of oil. It was rolling in cash when oil prices were sky high, but here's the twist. Did they save any of that money? Not really. Enter the major dip in oil prices, and the economy took a nosedive so sharp it could make you dizzy. I mean, imagine this. Maria, a teacher, earns roughly just enough a month to buy a loaf of bread. How ironic is that? Here's a country rich in resources, but people can barely afford basic necessities. Moving on, let's talk inflation. We're not just talking a mild increase. We're talking hyperinflation. The kind that makes prices balloon faster than you can keep track. Venezuelans were literally needing wheelbarrows for their stacks of cash. Now, we'll pause here to digest this sheer chaos, because truly, it's a lot. We have all heard about the economic calamity that's been unfolding in Venezuela, but here's the kicker. This crisis isn't just about declining oil prices. Oh no, it's way deeper than that. Venezuela has been heavily reliant on oil exports, which sounds great when oil prices are high, but it's catastrophic when they plummet. And that complete dependency on a volatile market is a colossal gamble. Now, consider this. Hyperinflation in Venezuela has absolutely decimated the average person's savings. Imagine waking up to find your money is worth half of what it was yesterday. Pedro, just a regular teacher who worked tirelessly for decades, now sees his life savings can barely buy groceries. In such chaos, the black market thrives, and it's no surprise, really, when the official channels fail, people resort to unregulated means. And then there's corruption, often the invisible hand in many of these scenarios. While the people suffer, those in power seem to thrive, isolated by wealth from the reality of the streets. As we sift through this quagmire, you start to ask yourself, is there any way out of this mess? Okay, so let's break this down. We're talking about Venezuela, a country rich in oil. Yes, oil. The golden liquid, the stuff that can transform economies. But here, it's not the savior you'd expect. Because somehow the economy is spiraling downwards. Why, you ask? Corruption, inefficiency, and mismanagement. But let's dive deeper. Venezuela was once the richest country in South America. Can you even imagine? A bustling economy and thriving industries. But look at it now. Hyperinflation is tearing it apart. Prices soar faster than anyone can keep up with, and yet the government prints more cash. Isn't that like pouring gasoline on a fire? Meanwhile, people struggle to buy even basic necessities. Enter Rafael, an ordinary Venezuelan who used to work at an oil company. Now, he spends hours waiting in line for bread. Let's talk politics, because it's all connected. Trade sanctions, international pressure, even geopolitics. But is that the whole story? Corruption runs deep and resources are mismanaged. The economy, quite frankly, is stuck in a vicious cycle. And that cycle seems never-ending. As we wrap up this wild journey through the twisting and turning saga of Venezuela's economy, let's stop and think, really think, about what we've uncovered. I mean, we've seen the catastrophic collapse, the desperate struggles, and a never-ending spiral that seems to grip this nation with no mercy. But how did it reach this point? Who's really pulling the strings here, and why? Could it really be just bad policy, or is there more to this crumbling legacy? Through our lens, we met folks like Jose, who hustle day to day, clinging to hope amidst scarce resources and relentless inflation. We all felt the palpable frustration and the thirst for some semblance of stability, yet we also see the resilience. So the question is, where does Venezuela go from here? Is there a path to recovery for these folks who've endured so much? Or is the road ahead just as uncertain and twisted as the past? Ultimately, we must ask, is the light really at the end of this tunnel?